All right, guys, we're going to move on to lesson 2 here, which is functions, inverses, and compositions. We're just going to focus on functions here for our first lesson. And so the first couple questions here ask you whether or not this is a function, And so the key to understanding whether or not something is a function is something you guys may have heard of before. It is called the vertical line test. And so that says that if a vertical line hits the graph more than once, then it is not a function. So you can draw a vertical line anywhere on this graph. If I draw it right here, you see that it hits the graph once, twice, the same vertical line. It's like an up and down line. And so that tells me that no, this is not a function. And so for the explanation, you can say vertical line hits more than once. So then moving on to our next one over here, we can do a vertical line test on number 2 as well. And if I draw a vertical line, oops, I'm going to keep doing this in red. If I draw a vertical line anywhere, it hits it once or not at all. So you can see all of these different vertical lines I'm drawing. No individual vertical line hits the graph more than once. And so for this one, for number 2, I'm going to say, yes, it is a function. And the explanation there is vertical line does not hit more than once. All right, next up here is the same idea. It says, is this set of points a function? Explain why. Now, a couple different ways you can look at this. The first way I would say is we could actually kind of use the same idea we used last time. We can still use the vertical line test, but we're just going to have to graph all of these points. So I'm going to go ahead and graph these. So we have 2, 3 is right here about, we'll say. We'll call that 2, 3. And then we have 2, 5 right here. And then 0, 1 is right there. And then we have negative 3, 8 would be like up here. Okay, and now I would do that same vertical line test and see if there was any line that hit the graph more than once. So that's a no, no, and then this one is actually a yes. And so I would say this one is not a function because the vertical line hits more than once. So right here we see that vertical line hit more than once, so that makes it not a function. Now, the little shortcut for this, if you have points, if you see the same point appearing there twice, then that right away means that this is not a function. So let's try this for number 4 then, same idea here. I can already kind of see that there's no repeated x values with different y values, but if you wanted to graph them all, 1, negative 3 would be right here. Negative 2, 5 would be about there. This doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of a general idea. So then 4, 7 would be like up here. And then negative 6, 5 would be over here. So all my vertical lines are good. 1, 2, 3, and 4. No vertical line would hit any of those. So I'm going to say yes, that is a function. All right, next up we have number 5 and 6. We're actually going to skip these, so don't worry about those. You can leave them blank. We'll go ahead to the next ones. All right, next up what we're going to do is we're going to do something called evaluating the function. So it gives us a function here. It says g of x equals x squared plus 2x. That's kind of our rule. And then it asks for g of negative 10. So what's happened here is they've replaced this x with negative 10. And so what I do is I go through each one of these x's, and every time I see an x, I write in parentheses, I write negative 10. So it's going to be negative 10 squared plus 2 times negative 10. So you can see what I did there is I replaced this x with a negative 10. Now the x was squared, so now the negative 2 is squared. And then this x was multiplying by 2, so I just replaced the x with a negative 10 there since that's what they did. So whatever number's in here, you just plug it in for the x's. Since you can see it was an x here, they switched it to negative 10. So my job is to switch these ones to negative 10. Then we do need to kind of evaluate this using PEMDAS, or you can use a calculator. And so negative 10 squared is 100. And then 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. And so this tells me that g of negative 10 is 80. And so that's my answer there. My answer is actually kind of 80. The g of negative 10 is kind of me restating the question. All right, so we'll do the same thing over here on number 8. So on this one, they want f of negative 1. So I'm going to run through this function, and every time I see an x, I replace it with a negative 1. Now in this case, there's only one x, so I'm just going to replace it with negative 1. And that's it, or that's not it, but that's my setup there. So on this question back here, you see we had two x's in the function. So now I'm going to, I had to replace it twice, but now I only have one x in the function, so I only have to replace it once. All right, so now I'm going to figure out what's, I'm going to evaluate this. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, and then negative 2 minus 5 is negative 7. So f of negative 1 equals negative 7. So f of negative 1 is kind of me restating the question, and then negative 7 is my actual answer. All right, next up here, we'll go ahead and do number 9. So we'll do k of 8 is what it's asking for. So that means I'm going to plug in an 8 for x. There's only one x in this case, so I'm only going to plug it in once. And then I'll go ahead and do my PEMDAS. So 8 times 8 is 64. 8 squared is 64. I got to do my exponents first. And then 3 times 64 is 192. And so k of 8 is 195. So 195 is really my answer. The k of 8 is like me restating the question. All right, and then lastly, we'll do number 10 here. So it's asking for g of negative 6. So I need to plug in a negative 6 in for that x right there. So negative 3 times negative 6 plus 5. So negative 3 times negative 6 is positive 18 plus 5, and that would be 23.